name is Marcie Clark, and I am the chairperson for the Boone County Republican Party's subcommittee for election integrity. I'm a part of that because I believe our votes are extremely important, and due to some things that we've seen over the last few years, it's brought us to the conclusion that our votes are possibly compromised. So that is my role, and that is why I am doing what I'm doing. Basically, what happens, you all know that when you go to the to vote, you go in and you check in at the e-poll book, and they take your driver's license, they scan it in, and your information pops up. They confirm that that is where you live, and then they give you a ballot, and you take the ballot, you fill it out at the table, and then you take it over to the Verity scanner machine, and you place your ballot, and it scans the ballot as it goes through the machine and down into the box. At the end of the day, when they're closing down the polls, they are taking what they call a V drive from the machine. They are placing it in an envelope that goes back to the clerk. The clerk, and in this bag, there's a lot of different things that they place in this bag. They also place the tapes that are printed at the end of the night. So they take all of this back to the clerk's office. And later on, the clerk will take out the tapes, and they'll take out the V drive, and they'll compare the numbers on the V drive to the tapes. And all they're really doing is comparing the machine to the machine when they do this. They have not counted any physical ballots, and nor will they. I currently have a question into our clerk as if he can choose to physically count the ballots himself to see how many physical ballots are inside of the box to match to the numbers on the tapes in the V drive. And he has that question into the Secretary of State currently and have not heard back from them. And I asked this question back in November. So it is not our clerk that's holding up the process. It is the state that is holding up the answer to this question. Some of the issues that we come across that this is giving us pause, like I said, you're comparing the machine to the machine. So that's one issue. Another issue is that these machines have jammed. We had 10 jammed machines in November. They had to get a court order to open up those 10 machines and rescan every ballot inside of them. We don't necessarily know what's going on inside of these machines. I'm not saying there's anything nefarious going on in Boone County, but what I do know is that the voters have the right to transparency in their elections. They have the right to know that their vote counts. And that includes understanding every single thing about these machines, from its code to who is running it, to who built it, all of these things. These are very important. This is very important information for the voters to understand and have access to. Currently, we don't have access to very much of our information at all to be able to check and recheck information. For instance, our mail-in ballots are a big problem, and that's a problem from start to finish. The laws changed in 2021. 2022, an emergency order was put in place to just take mail-in ballots willy-nilly. So we did. And so 2021, they actually made that law so that we could continue to accept mail-in ballots for any reason. You go out to Secretary of State's site and you go to the registration portal if you haven't registered. So you register to vote there, or you can go and register where you renew your driver's license now. And then later on, when you're ready for your ballot, you'll go in the portal around the time of the election. You'll go out and order your ballot, and they will send it to you. You will sign the outside of the ballot, and you'll fill out your ballot. You'll put it back in this orange envelope, which goes inside of a white envelope, and it's all sent back to the clerk's office. There's 2 drop box areas. There's one at the clerk's office in Florence and one at the clerk's office in Burlington. And so they will check both of those boxes. They will take all those ballots out, and they will start scanning them into machines. Before they do that, though, they have to scan the envelope itself into a check-in that's a VRS system, voter registration system, basically. That's what that stands for. And so the VRS will pull up their signature online, and they will look at the envelope signature and compare it to the online signature. Now, I have never seen these signatures myself because I am not on the Board of Elections. So I was not privy to that information. I want to just make that clear to everyone. I have never seen the ballots personally because, again, I'm not allowed to touch them. No one is allowed to touch the ballots but the Board of Elections. Anyway, that's how that works. Then they take everything and they separate it out in a way that keeps the ballot separate from the envelope, but the envelope is still kept, so that the privacy of the voter is kept confidential, so that even the Board of Elections doesn't know whose ballot scanning into the machine. And so they take all of those and they scan them into a machine that's sitting in the clerk's office. And then they are set aside, and the deputy clerk takes them and locks them in her office afterwards at the end of the evening. The problem with this process, the mail-ins, is that, again, you don't get to see the voter. This person is ordering a ballot from online, having it sent to their home, we hope is a valid address. And if it isn't a valid address, it'll sit at the office and maybe be sent back to the clerk's office, or someone will pick it up. And so you don't ever really get to see the person who has voted. The other issue is when the ballots are brought back to the clerk's office, a person is able to drop off multiple ballots. For instance, if you have someone who is in a nursing home situation, you might have several people from that nursing home, and that person is able to bring all of those ballots for those people. That's valid, but it's also concerning because we don't have a way to really know where these are coming from, and the clerk does not ask. I don't even know if they're allowed to ask where they're coming from. That's the issue with this. The other issue is a lot of us have seen our own signatures on the pads, and the VRS system obviously is an electronic signature. It's going to be difficult to match precisely signature online to signature on envelopes. I just question this process, and with no transparency at all, it's questionable, and it just brings a lot of doubt into people's minds. So that is one of the biggest issues, glaring issues that I see in this process is our mail-in votes. We actually do need to go back to the process we had put in place for absentee voting in 2019, which did have some speed bumps, so to speak, that allowed for less cheating to happen. You actually had to have a reason for why you needed to vote absentee, those sorts of issues. So that's one issue I see. Another problem we have is that our voter rolls are highly, highly inflated. And I've said this so many times, I almost see it in my sleep. We have about 105,000 eligible voters. That does not mean every one of them vote. That means that is everyone over 18 who lives in Boone County that is eligible to vote. So we have 105,000 people who can do that. We have 116,000 plus people on our registration rolls. That is a problem. I believe it might create some issues if you do have someone who would want to cheat and want to violate the sanctity of our elections. This might allow for them to do that a little bit easier if they have registrations that they can choose from. Again, we don't have proof of this because there's no transparency. We are not able to get the information we need to know if any of this is true or not true, for that matter. When I ask for something like the absentee ballot list so that we can check names and see if these are actually people who live in the county, I'm not able to get that because for the primary list, which was only 14,000 people, that would cost me about $1,200, $1,200, because it's 50 cents per page. And if I were to try to get the general election where we had 39,000 voters, I mean, you can imagine that's just an exponential amount of money. Again, this is coming from the state, who is telling our clerks that they can only print it. It must be redacted. It costs this exorbitant amount of money, which is 50 cents per page. And it's ridiculous. We should not have these barriers in place that keeps average citizens of Kentucky away from the information they need to be able to know if our elections are secure or not. Other outside agencies are able to get our registration to know how many people we have on our rolls. In, I think, Washington, there's several different agencies that every few months they get our updated rolls. and they get them for virtually nothing, while we citizens have to pay thousands of dollars to get the information we need. As a citizen in Kentucky, if I wanted our registration rolls today, I sent a request down to the Secretary of State's office, or the State Board of Elections office, I should say, for the registration rolls. They would deny it because I am not allowed by law to have it. You must be a candidate to have our registration rolls. And I think that is a big problem. To boot, they're very expensive. I'm not sure the cost. I did hear someone say once they had paid about $2,000 for the registration rolls. I think that is egregious and it shouldn't be. That is my opinion, and some of the issues that we're seeing. Counting votes is different than counting ballots. There are still games that can be played, but yes, I think that a counter on the machines would go a long way. And I think that would be one added security measure that would ensure voters that their elections were secure and truthful. According to some of the sources that we have, there is a receipt that is created, but you are not able to access it. And part of the reason is I'm not sure how it would work, but it's called a CVR. Cast vote report or record is a transcript of the voting. It's a record of the voting, but you're not able to get it. You could request it, and they would say, well, we wouldn't be able to tell if it was your ballot or not, because it would include other voters' information on it. Even though it would not have their names, they would say that it would violate their privacy. You're not able to get that, but it does exist. The machines do have to record it. It's part of the standards of the way it's built. So what should voters be aware of? This one is just a very common sense, easy thing for people to do when they go in to vote. They should take note of all the equipment that's being used around them. There's going to be a MiFi unit at the table where they check in. The e-poll book that they're going to use to scan your driver's license, take note of that. The Verity machine that scans your ballot, you can take note of that. Those are the things I would say to look at, not because of any other reason than to just, when we take note of things, it just becomes more real. It's less of me telling someone, hey, these things exist. When they see it for themselves, it becomes more of a real issue. Recognize what they are sitting around you as you're checking in, and then as you're putting your ballot through the scanner. Also, watch your ballot. If the perforated portion at the top of the ballot is ripped, if it has like a small, how when you'll tear off a piece of paper and it might have a small piece missing from the top, watch for that. And also watch for if there's
hanging chad.
Yeah, kind of like that, or an extra portion. Either one of those could cause the machine to reject your ballot. Also, if you leave portions of the ballots unmarked, you really do need to mark the entire ballot. For instance, a lot of people didn't understand the two bills that were on the back they needed to vote on. A lot of people didn't know what those were. The language was very confusing, and it was probably purposefully that way. The language was just very confusing for anyone. Even some attorneys were saying, I'm not sure what this means. People were leaving it blank, and then their ballots were being rejected. Know that you have to mark the entire ballot. Don't bother with taking meters or devices or anything in to see if the internet is connected, because the internet is connected in that building. You're in a fire department, you're in a school, they have internet access. Poll workers have to be able to connect to Wi-Fi so that they can contact the clerk's office. That is one of the biggest things there, is that they need to have internet access so that they can actually call when they have issues. I don't think the meters are that helpful, but also they are truthful, but you kind of have to be an engineer or someone who works with them often to know what they're doing and what they're telling you. They're not that easy to really use, I don't believe. That's my opinion. Others may disagree. That's okay. Yes, those are all the things I can really think of that people should be aware of or looking for.
So there's devices that they look up your information, and is that attached to the internet?
Are they connected directly to to the internet. No, they are not. But they do have to use the internet to get the information to the clerk or to the clerk's office.
Do you have any explanation as to why we've never had issues with our voting machines until this past election?
Actually, the assumption is that we have had issues with our voting machines. It's the fact that we didn't know to look. No one was looking at our registration rolls. No one was paying attention to our elections. We all assumed that our elections were safe and secure, and we didn't need to worry about that part. 2020 is what showed many people who woke up the next morning and found out president that they had voted for had lost. Many people woke up that day and said, what just happened and why? And so when they did that and they started digging into things and looking around, they realized there were a lot more problems than we'd been aware of. So that's why. There is an idea out there that we've had issues all along. It's just the fact that we didn't know it. In 2018, Allison Grimes was our Secretary of State. At that time, we did not have Eric just yet, but we were sued by Judicial Watch to have 5,607, I believe, voters removed from our rolls. We removed the 5,000 plus people from the rolls. Within days of doing that, Allison Grimes signed a contract with what we call Eric. And Eric is software that's supposed to clean your registration rolls for you. Obviously, we found a lot of issues with it. And Eric also has a lot of access to our information. You would be surprised at all of the information Eric is able to access on each and every voter. After that, cleaned the rolls in, I think, July. They went a month, and then the ACLU sued us to put those registrants back onto our rolls. And the reason for that was because they were concerned about discouraging voters. They didn't want voters to be discouraged from voting. So they sued us to have them put back on, and a judge did in fact order us to put them back. Remember, I said we took off 5,000 plus, but when we put them back on, we put 6,000 plus back onto our registration. So we didn't just put what they said to put back, we went above and beyond. And so that's what happened in 2018.
Where did we get the 6,000 list from?
That's a good question. Since we don't have access to that information, I can't tell you.
So is this a legislative act that can fix these issues?
Yes, it almost has to be. Everyone is aware that we have overinflated rolls, and many people do not see it as a problem. Our clerks aren't happy about it. We really do have quite a few good clerks in the state. They are good, honest people. They just want to do a good job and give us secure elections. Because the state has taken so much over from them, they have very little to do. So for instance, if you call your clerk to say, hey, my loved one passed away, could you please remove them from the registration roll? Well, they're going to take your name and all the information, and they're going to send it downstate, because the clerks are not allowed to remove anybody from the registration rolls. After they send it downstate, it's up to the state whether or not they remove them or not.
So we don't know if they did it or not.
Exactly.
So I know this is a huge task that you've been taking on, and we really appreciate your efforts and all the hard work. As a citizen of Boone County, what can we do to help assist with the initiative?
As a citizen of Boone County, it's not completely hopeless. So a couple things you can do. You can attend the Board of Elections meetings if you're able to. That's a great way to learn about our process and all the things that go on. Sometimes they're boring, sometimes they're interesting, but it's still important either way. So usually they're on a Tuesday, but this is due to some scheduling issues. They had to put it, I think it's a Wednesday this time, but it's March 9th at 9 a.m. It's usually Tuesdays at 9 a.m. and it just varies from month to month, but they try to keep it within that first or second week of the month. I believe it's posted on the clerk's site, but if not, you can always contact them and they will give you the date and time of the meeting. But most often it's that 9 a.m. time in the morning. It is difficult to find, and to be honest, I've not looked for it. I've just heard people say it's not easy to find out there. And I agree. So you could even ask your clerk to make that more visible. He's very friendly. He would probably be willing to make that more user-friendly. It's being held at the administrative building in Burlington. It's across from the courthouse. By signing up to be a poll worker or a challenger. All you have to do for that is give your information to the clerk's office, or there's the form online underneath the elections portion of the site. You'll just fill out all the information. And if they say, oh, we have enough people, then tell them you'd like to be a challenger. They will give you the information to contact your representative for your party that's on the Board of Elections, and you can hopefully sign up that way. Another thing you can do is join your local party. According to how you're registered to vote is the party you would join. So if you are a registered Democrat, you'll go to the Democratic Party's meetings. And if you are a registered Republican, you would go to the Boone County Republican Party meetings. You'll get a lot of information there. You'll learn a lot if you start doing that. Now, if you're independent, you can attend the meetings, but there's no voting privileges unless you're a Republican and you are brought onto the committee. You do have to be a committee member to be able to vote. When you get involved, ask lots of questions. Don't be afraid to ask. Whatever it is that you're thinking might be something that would help you learn more about the process. Find other liberty-minded people to meet and discuss these issues with. Meet your county clerk. You want him to be the person, like when you're driving down the road, he waves at you and knows exactly who you are. That's the kind of relationship you want with your clerk, is that they know who you are. We have to take back our clerks. They're currently being made to be just cogs for the State Board of Elections and the Secretary of State in their giant machine. But they guard our elections and they're much more important. And so they need more say in all of these processes that we've discussed here today. I believe they need to be more than I think they need to be part of the decision-making process. Be sure that when you move or one of your loved ones passes away, that you contact your county clerk so that they can send your information downstate to remove you or the other person from the rolls. And this includes college students as well. That is a big problem in our state, is that college students who sign up to vote and then they move or they go home and they no longer are in Kentucky, but they're still on our rolls. Those are all things you can do. I realize maybe that last one might seem like you're just spinning your wheels, but I think it's still important to go through the motions and do the right thing, because eventually we will have someone in there who will do the job that we elected them to do.